have a very exciting package. I placed a really big order from my own store. I thought it'd be fun to open it up and show what things look like from my website when they are shipped out and packaged. If you're new here, hi, I'm Madison. I'm 28 years old and I'm a new artist, and I have launched my second ever collection, which feels really wild to say because I've only been doing this for about a year. I launched my first collection back in October, so to already have a second one out feels pretty awesome, and it's been super fun. I was actually a preschool teacher for 3 years after graduating college. Very well bubble wrapped. If you ever buy something framed from my website, the frames do have real glass in the front, so they make sure to keep everything super safe and well packaged for the travel. Here's the first two framed pieces, and they wrapped them together. But as I was saying, I was actually a preschool teacher at the Google Children's Centers, which, if you didn't know, because most people don't, they keep it pretty quiet. Google used to have these 4 children's centers at their headquarters location in Mountain View, California. And I applied to work there as I was finishing out my senior year of college. First print, love it. However, I was a 2020 grad, so I made it through part of the application process and interviews, but there was, as we all know, a pandemic going on, so we kind of had to pause my hiring process once I got to what was basically the finish line, because they had closed the schools at the time and weren't able to give me an actual like start date, which is needed for like the contract and everything. So I basically just kind of had to wait second print for like, I don't even know, 8 months, 10 months until the schools reopened. And during that time, I was just living at home, riding out the pandemic like a lot of us were. I really love these frames. This is the natural oak frame that's on my website in the 8x10 size. And then I finally got to start working there in May, late May of 2021. So I started the application process probably in like February of 2020, made it through all of my interviews and to that final step where they would have offered me the job by like June of 2020. And then I just had to kind of hang out until the next May. But that was honestly like my dream teaching job, because as I was going through my child development program in school, I was kind of becoming less and less sure about whether teaching as a profession was going to be it for me. I felt that working for a children's center at a tech company would open a lot more doors and help me like make other connections and potentially like move into a different area of the company eventually. But for the time being, like I did love working with children. I loved studying child development. I find that entire field so fascinating and have so much respect for it, and I think it's so important. But realistically, for who I am and for the kind of life that I was envisioning for myself and wanting to live one day, I didn't feel like it was going to end up working out. But it was a great first job out of college, and I'm so thankful for that experience. Looks like there's 3 in this one. I tried to order both of my frames in the 3 different sizes that I offer on my site, just so that I could have some in stock to, like I said, take some product photos and also just have on hand. These are the 12x16 framed prints. But anyways, I started working at the Google Children's Center. My first year, I was working with like 2.5 to 3-year-olds. And honestly, for the first like 8 months or so, I was in love with that job. I loved it so much. I was so excited to go back every day. I was, for a few months, commuting from Berkeley to Mountain View, which if you're from the Bay Area, that's like an hour-long drive without traffic. Kind of luckily, this was still the part of the pandemic where a lot of the big tech companies hadn't reopened their offices. Google had only reopened the children's centers, but every other sector was still work from home. So there was a lot less traffic in the Bay than there normally would have been, which made the commute a lot easier, but I was still driving like 2 hours a day, and it just was not sustainable. I did end up moving out to the Mountain View area after like a few months, and that got a lot better. I do love that these frames have these like little metal swivel things instead of the like prongs that get bent up and down, because I feel like the prongs have a tendency to break after so many times of like switching them out. And I feel like when they swivel, it's a lot sturdier and longer lasting. They all come with these corner protectors, which I think is very nice. This is the walnut frame color. So it's a darker wood, and I personally really love this one. I think it's just like so chic and gorgeous. I also love the natural oak, but I think to my core, I'm just like a little bit of like a darker girly. So this one is definitely my preferred, but I also love this vibe. But yeah, anyways, I loved it for the first like 8 months to a year-ish, and then the teacher burnout really hits you pretty quickly. If you are a teacher, you know that it is a lot. It's a lot to be in a classroom every day. It's a lot to have like fixed hours where you have to be somewhere, especially in this like time that we're living in, where so many of my friends would work from home and had just like so much more flexibility in their day-to-day life, and I like had to be stuck there from like this time to this time. Also, getting PTO when you work in a school. PTO at most companies is like a nightmare, but especially when you work with kids, there's just logistical things that you have to keep in mind when taking time off, because there quite literally has to be enough bodies in the school to like be legal and to be safe and to make sure that everybody is taken care of. So that was also really hard, like finding time to take off, because like I was accruing vacation hours but wasn't able to use them for a while. And I think that like also helps lead to burnout faster than some other jobs. I kind of got the same 3 prints done in frames because I needed more samples of these 3 prints, but I am gonna swap them out with some other samples that I have of other prints to take pictures with, but I just needed to buy a bunch of frames, and so I was like, I might as well get a few extra of these prints in them. I don't know if that made sense. I'm gonna keep this one in its wrapping because this one might be a gift for somebody, but it also might be a bigger size, so I'm not sure. And then we have our same print in the natural oak frame. I also feel like certain paintings look better in the darker wood and certain ones look better with the lighter. So sometimes you kind of got to go based off what the artwork is. I think this one works in either color, but I might prefer it in the darker wood. I'm also going to keep this one wrapped because this one also might be a gift. I think about a year into working there, I kind of mentally started coming up with an exit plan and trying to find a way to pivot my career and maybe move somewhere else within the company. Oh, that is so heavy. Whenever you order from my site, it comes with a sticker. This is a sticker that is from one of my paintings in the collection. This is from Counter Offer, one of my favorites. It doesn't look like they gave me a thank you card, which that also comes in every order, probably because they knew I ordered these and it was like samples, but I kind of was hoping they would include that, so I might have to reach out to somebody. Part of my thinking as I was coming up with my exit plan was like what I would want to do that wasn't child development. And another big interest of mine in college was digital design or like online media or media arts. I actually have a media arts minor, so I did take like a couple graphic design classes. I honestly, in that minor, I mostly took like film classes, which was super fun and I really enjoyed. I don't think I could ever make it in the film industry, but I am so fascinated by it and I just like love film and TV so much. But I was trying to think of like what my other interests were and what I might enjoy pursuing. So in the meantime, I started taking some online graphic design classes through Coursera, which I honestly really enjoyed doing that. It was a lot of fun to like have something outside of working with kids that I could work on in my free time, and it felt like I was like doing something and working towards something. So I feel like that helped me not lose my mind so much working with kids every single day. The course I was taking was like a 7-course program, and I worked on that on and off for like a couple of years because I, like I said, was super burnt out at work. And so there were times where I was like really motivated about it, and then there were times where I was just kind of like in survival mode. Okay, these were a real test because I painted all of these prints on very small, like 6x8 or even 5x7 pieces of paper, pretty small, and I wasn't sure how large I would be able to go with these. So currently on my site, I only have this 8x10 size and this 12x16 size. For my canvas paintings, my oil paintings, I'm offering a 16x20 inch print size, and I wanted to see if my print company could blow up these paintings, these small little paper paintings, into a 16x20, and I think it looks great, actually. I was worried that it would be like fuzzy or grainy or just like not look good, but it looks so good. Okay, I think I can start offering a bigger size because I honestly think this looks great. I'm hoping it's not just because like the style of this photo is a little bit like more blurred and softer, so we'll see what the other ones that have like a little bit more sharpness to them, but I think that these look amazing. So that's super exciting. Anyways, fast forward to like 3 years after I started working at Google, they actually put a like surprise meeting on all of our calendars, and that night we learned that they were going to be shutting down the schools and we would all be getting laid off. This was 2023, 2024, when a lot of layoffs were happening all across tech, but I feel like Google's were some of the ones that were like making the bigger headlines because it was just like such a mass layoff, and it was like pretty shocking, or maybe that's just because I was like very much in that circle, so it was like a lot of what I was hearing. A lot of other Google employees were getting laid off. We all thought that we were going to be safe because we were providing a service that was beneficial to a lot of the Google employees and their children, and we just like didn't think that this was at all on the horizon, so it was pretty shocking. And I really do empathize and sympathize a lot with my coworkers, especially the ones who had families to worry about, because that's a really awful thing to have to go through. And I think a lot of my coworkers planned to retire from this company and they planned on working there the rest of their lives. I, like I said, had already kind of been working on my exit plan for a couple of years at that point. So for me, it was almost like this huge blessing in disguise. And I felt pretty excited about the prospect of getting laid off and getting severance and getting to leave a job that I wasn't really that obsessed with. But it was very sad to have to part ways with my coworkers and all the families that I'd been working with and all the kids. I loved the kids so much. It's what kept me at that job for as long as I was there. And the fact that like not only was I leaving, but that this whole entire organization was being disbanded and just completely abandoned was very sad. That part of it I don't like. I think like in my head, as I was working on my exit plan, I knew that I would be leaving, but I just never in a million years would have thought that like everyone else would have had to leave too, and that there just wouldn't be this program anymore, because quite honestly, it was one of the best childcare programs I've ever seen. Definitely like an amazing one to work at, and I had already worked at a really amazing children's center at my college, and I just like couldn't believe that they were gonna throw away something that was so thoughtfully and intentionally curated and was just giving such an amazing experience to all these children. So that aspect of it was really sad. But I got to have like 9 months between when they announced that this was happening and when we would actually be shutting our doors and leaving to plan what I wanted to do next. So a lot of my coworkers were job hunting and looking for other teaching positions in the area, which was also really messed up. Suddenly there was like hundreds of educators, all extremely qualified, all incredible, all very capable, now vying for the same few positions at these like schools that are barely comparable to what we were used to. Also, there was like hundreds of families now having to find alternative childcare for their kids at centers that again were barely comparable to what they were used to and what they'd experienced. It just created this like huge influx of people looking for jobs and looking for childcare spots in an already crowded, it just like created a lot of chaos and just like not a nice thing to go through and not a nice thing to put people through. But as they all were looking for spots like that, I was kind of just thinking about taking a break, honestly. I was 26 at the time, still feeling so young and so like my whole life was still wide open ahead of me. I pretty quickly decided that I wasn't going to job hunt until after the layoffs happened and after I'd given myself a little bit of a break. Part of what I really wanted to do during that break was to travel, because since I was a 2020 grad, I didn't get to travel after graduation like I would have wanted to. And this just felt like such a perfect opportunity for a redo. And I really took that and ran with it. I planned myself like a month-long trip in Europe and I had an amazing time. I moved all of my stuff back to my parents' house in Berkeley so that I didn't have to pay rent on my apartment anymore. Hopped on a plane, traveled for a month, went to a bunch of museums. I saw friends who were out in Europe and just honestly had a grand old time. Did a lot of relaxing, did a lot of exploring, a lot of adventuring, a lot of just like walking around and being by myself with my own thoughts and just having that time to like reflect and think about what I wanted my future to look like. And I feel like it was a really formative time in my life. I look back on it with just like so much gratitude that I was able to do that and that I could afford to do that. Shout out to severance checks. I also was able to pay off the remainder of my student loans with my severance check. So honestly, in a lot of ways, getting laid off was like one of the best things that has ever happened to me. And I know it's like a really privileged thing to be able to say that because I do get to live at home. I am able to give myself the time and grace to figure things out without feeling like pressure to like feed a family or pay rent or a mortgage. I do have to pay like an obscene amount of money for healthcare right now. I miss being employed literally just for the healthcare, but in the grand scheme of things, it'll be a small price to pay for this time that I'm allowing myself to just like grow and build a business and figure out different skills that I didn't go to college for. After I got home from traveling, I did do a little bit of job hunting. I was applying for a lot of like admin positions at school. I was applying for honestly like anything that had to do with child development but wasn't actually like a classroom teaching position. I was applying for design stuff. I was applying to things I was absolutely not qualified for but that I like would have loved to do. I was applying for jobs at museums that like I never even heard back from. And through all of that, I was like, as cool as some of these jobs sound, I don't think they're for me. Like I don't think that like this is what I'm meant for. I don't think this is where I'm gonna be happiest. And I had to like be really honest with myself about like what I would be happiest with, because I can't just like sit around doing like nothing forever. And I was like babysitting at the time, and so I was still like earning a little bit of money here and there, but I knew that I like needed something that would give me a little bit more purpose and something that had a lot more like longevity to it than anything that I was currently doing. Feeling inspired by my travels in Europe, I started painting again, and I had forgotten how much joy that used to bring me. Like it used to be such a thing of when life felt really hard and like school was difficult or work was difficult, like painting was kind of always that like nice like reprieve from stressful stuff. And it's always been a hobby that I didn't really want to monetize. It came to a point where I was like, if I don't try this as a career, like I may not really get to paint as much if I'm doing something else. When I was teaching, I barely painted. I maybe painted like 2 or 3 times within that whole 3-year period that I was a teacher. And I didn't want to fall back into that same pattern of like not utilizing my creative abilities and my creative interests, because that is truly what makes me the happiest, is when I get to be creative and when I get to like exercise that part of my brain. And I do think as far as teaching jobs go, working in a preschool, especially working in a preschool that has philosophies that are more play-based and more centered around the child and a little less like academically rigorous, with more focus on like realistic skills that children will need. And we followed, if you are kind of familiar with like the child development industry or philosophies, the school I was working at followed a lot more of like Reggio Emilia Montessori practices and philosophies. With that comes a lot of creative freedom for us teachers in building our own curriculum how we want it to be and getting to build curriculum based on children's natural interests. So I think that did help to like scratch my creative brain a little bit, because I could like look and observe what the kids were doing and like build an activity off of that. But it was still like doing that stuff for other people, and I wanted to be able to do it for myself, and I wanted to have like complete and total creative freedom. I started painting again, I think that like November, maybe like a month or 2 after I got back from traveling. I think this one also looks really good in a 16 by 20. So that's very exciting. I actually really love this one in the lighter frame. I think that looks really good. And I feel like the fun thing with art or any skill really is that the more you do it, the more you understand it and the better you become at it. It's like the more you practice, the more your brain gets used to it and the easier things become. It was really nice to just start off with having it be this like really low pressure thing that I was just barely picking up again and seeing where it took me. With starting that back up, I decided to return to another old hobby of mine, which was to make videos. I used to make and edit videos just for fun that like never ended up on the internet, or like I would post to a very small private Instagram account that like 3 of my friends followed, and I would just like make silly little videos, but I was like too scared to like post them publicly for people to perceive. With returning to art and practicing that again, I decided to start making videos again, and I was making videos about my art, and it just was like so much fun. I had forgotten how much fun video editing and creation could be. When I was in college, I was making videos for my cultural club that I was a part of. I was part of the Filipino club at Cal Poly, Filipino Cultural Exchange, shout out. And that was like a 400-person club that I was like taking photos and videos for and editing those photos and videos and like having to upload them on like consistent schedules and stuff. And doing that on top of being like a full-time student was so stressful. Once I was done with that position, I did it for 1 year. I didn't edit anything for years. Like I couldn't bring myself to like open editing software. I got so burnt out from like having to do that consistently on like such tight schedules that it just like lost all of its fun for me. I couldn't even look at like Adobe Premiere Pro. But getting to do it again in a setting that was like just for fun and just for me and like my friends and about my art and being posted on my own schedule, like I have once again been able to find so much joy in making videos. And I feel like getting to make art and getting to make videos about the art was just like such a natural pairing that it just made sense that this was something that I wanted to do for a long time and something that I can pour a lot of my energy into right now to hopefully build up for the future. And that's kind of just how I got started. I was just making TikToks about my painting and editing little painting montages to some fun sounds. Probably like 6 months later, I filmed my first YouTube video with a friend because I have honestly like always really loved YouTube. I feel like I grew up on YouTube, and there was times in my life where I watched so much more YouTube than TV or movies. And a friend of mine was like, let's just like film a little like YouTube video for fun, and maybe that'll like help you get past that like barrier of like being scared to do it. And so we filmed it, and I think I didn't end up editing and posting it until like a couple months later. That was when I started posting on YouTube. And then around that same time that I started posting on YouTube, I launched my first collection of paintings, and that was so much fun but so stressful because it was my first time figuring out how to do like any of that stuff. I had to build a website completely from scratch. I had to research different print-on-demand companies to link with my website. I needed to like figure out how to even like scan my paintings and like get them into a digital form so that I can get them made into prints. Like I felt very behind because I just like didn't know anything and I didn't go to school for this, but it was such a great learning experience to get myself to figure out each of those steps on my own. And I feel like it helped me realize that like I am a lot more capable than I sometimes think that I am, and that like you can genuinely do anything now that the internet is like so vast and has so much information. Like literally anything that I ever have needed to figure out, I can find the answer on the internet. And that just like is also a good reminder that like we live in a time where there's so much information readily available to us that there's just like genuinely no excuse to like not know how to do something, because you can figure anything out. But that time of my life was very much a lot of Googling, a lot of figuring things out, a lot of figuring out exactly what I wanted to do and how to make it fit into my ideal lifestyle. And for me, that meant going print on demand instead of printing, cutting, and shipping my own prints, which you do save some money doing that, but you pay it up in time. And I didn't want to pay in time because I love my free time, because I never again will be this young and this untethered. So I might as well try to build something for myself for future me who won't be as young and who might be a little bit more tethered to real life responsibilities. I have some just unframed prints, like I said, to just have some extra. think the one I really mainly wanted to see was how this one turned out, because I didn't get this one framed. I think this looks very good as well. I feel comfortable selling this size on my website. I think it turned out amazing. I feel so fortunate that this is the path that my life has taken thus far, and I don't know where it'll take me in the future. I'm really hoping that I can make this be something that lasts, because I'm honestly having so much fun doing it. Like, if this, what I'm doing right now every day, could be my life forever, I'd be so happy. Thank you for watching my videos. If you've made it this far, I love you, and I'm so appreciative that you would spend your time this way. I'm hoping to just continue growing these platforms, continue making art and selling art, and I want to get a little bit more experimental with my art. So if you have any suggestions or critiques or comments, I would love to hear it in the comments below. I genuinely feel so fortunate. Even though I'm not making very much money right now, I'm so happy with the way that I've been spending my time, and I just like feel so lucky that I get to be in this position, and that I have friends and family who support me, parents who let me live here and explore my dreams, and who are supportive of my dreams, even though it's a little bit unconventional and I'm not using the degree that I worked for and that they helped pay for. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was enjoyable to watch me sit here and unbox my prints. I really love how they've all turned out. I love the frames from my site. I think that all of the prints have turned out so well from this collection, and I'm just like really proud of it. If you want to know more about any of the prints that I've shown in this video, or any of the others that are in this collection and on my website, I have made 4 different YouTube videos going a little bit more in depth about each of my 8 paintings, and those are all posted on my channel already, and they're in a playlist for easy access. So if you want to hear more about the backstory or what the process of painting looked like, and I also have a lot of painting montages of just the beginning to end process for most of my paintings. So if you ever want to just like chill, get some laundry done, get some chores done, and have some background noise, those are really great videos for that, because I have just a lot of like yapping and then like lo-fi painting montages that I think are really fun to watch. I would love if you could check out my art on mtorioart.com. Maybe do a little browsing. You can read more about my story, about the story behind each of these paintings. I have like a little blurb with each painting to kind of describe what it's about or what it means to me. A little story to go with each one, because in addition to painting, I also really love writing, and it's one of the best ways that I like can express myself. So it's been really fun to also combine those 2 interests of painting and writing in my website, and getting to share a little bit of my words in addition to my images. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!